Good morning, Wanja.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm fantastic.
Wanja, can you introduce yourself to our followers on 30 Minutes With?
My name is Wanja Maina. I'm as Kenyan as they come. I am a feminist. I'm an Afro-feminist. I'm a politician. I'm very much interested in issues of climate. And I love supporting women and girls.
So, Wanja, we are here in Uganda,
Yes.
in Kampala, at the African Regional Forum on Sustainable Development, which has started 3 days ago, and today is the last day. Why was it important for you to be part of this forum?
One is that Africa as a continent really is a continent that is going through a transition. We've seen instances where the young people are saying we cannot be left behind. We've seen a lot of complex political transitions. We've seen a clamor for gender equality. So for me, it was important to dedicate this week to this forum because it's always good to be in a gathering where Africans are talking about themselves for themselves. And they're even pushing back against political bad manners like neocolonialism. They're pushing back against being imposed that. They're pushing back against funny debts from our colonizers. So it was important for me to be in such a Pan-Africanist gathering.
Can you introduce yourself? So I only spoke about the feminist activist, but tell us about your organization. You're the leader of an organization called Hummingbird. Can you tell us about what you do? Why did you set it up? And what are your projects?
The Hummingbird is inspired by Wangari Maathai. I got to meet Wangari Maathai is the first woman in Eastern Central Africa to get a PhD. She was a politician. She was an environmentalist. She was a climate justice advocate. And arguably, she was born way ahead of her time. If she was pushing for these issues of climate over 30, 40 years ago, she planted lots of trees and she used climate change advocacy to even promote political participation of women. I was inspired by her story and the story of the hummingbird, which is a bird that flies backwards and it goes over and above for social change and common good for all. Our organization empowers young women with disabilities in Nairobi and other regions in Mount Kenya. Currently, we are doing a project on climate justice and food systems. We are doing a project on sexual reproductive health and rights. And we are really big on issues of political participation, civic education, involvement in public life. No doubt that in the African continent, one of the things that we have in common is the exclusion of young women with disabilities in normal conversations of society. There is even exclusion in the feminist organizing movements. So we find ourselves in a very in-between kind of a situation. You are not welcome in the gender movement, you are not welcome in the feminist movement, you are not welcome in the mainstream youth movement. So I feel like pushing back against such kind of exclusion is important, and that's what I like doing. We have over 1,000 young women in our radar. We do a lot of projects. We enjoy, we have fun. It's important.
What are the main challenges you're facing when organizing in a very patriarchal, ableist, also very, let's say, diverse society? What are the main challenges and what are your priorities right now?
I think one of the challenges that I face as a young woman founder, and I would imagine it's a challenge faced by all young women founders in the region, is lack of flexible, trust-based, enjoyable funding. There are days you'll get an attempt to get a proposal, but the kind of requirements that you need, from having to have a lot of accounting documents, many documents, takes away from young women organizing, where our nascent organizations do not have a lot of structures. And I've always argued, if we don't have structures, do not leave us behind. Help us to get those structures that you want. So trust-based funding, constantly being told that you are not yet enough, being told that you should have been in existence for over 5 years. Those kind of things are come in the way of our organizing. The other thing is just constantly being pushed out of the women and the gender movement. It's more or less like in Kenya, they say, where haujajakwa skirt, to mean like you're not a big woman with kids, big fat one who walks like a boss. So if you're young, you are treated like a youth whose time is not yet up. But the young people are pushing back. In Kenya, we had the Gen Z movement that inspired a lot of young people across the region. In fact, the movement of the young Mozambican youth and the protests were actually inspired by the Gen Z. So funding becomes a big issue. Of course, Kenya, there's a lot of GBV and a lot of tech GBV. So there's a lot of online bullying that takes away our joy. No doubt that those are the big issues. In terms of priorities for me, we are headed towards elections in the next 2 years. Kenyans are very political. There's a campaign we started, and we say that we have a right to vote and to be elected. So we want to have a conversations around accessible ballots and accessible voting. We also want to have a conversation around people with disabilities vying, people with high potential being elected. Of course, other conversations that are important to us is the issue of climate change, climate justice. It is becoming a very big emerging issue, even in this conference that we are at. So I think that is an area we want to pursue. Gender equality is a cross-cutting issue all over the region. Social accountability, we want things to work, we want social protection to work. So our work is already cut out for us. We can only get better.
Great. Is that what, all the challenges that you've described, is that what pushed you to yourself get into politics? Since when have you been involved in politics? What are your main projects, plans? And with who do you hope to attain those goals?
I would say that politics, first and foremost, I think politics, even in the region, it is made to look like a very exclusive black male in our context of Kenya, black shoes, tall men in black suits. But I think even in a country, even in the region, even in the West, we've seen that countries that are led by women who hold very important portfolios, things work better in health, things work better in in education, things work better in social protection. So for me, the first thing that inspired me was Wanja Maina. I got to meet her when I was really young, like when I was a child. And my teacher really made me to meet her, and she said that she's the first person to get a PhD.
So you met?
Yes.
Actually? Wow.
I even have a photo of her and me when I was a child. Yes. So I think I got to be inspired by such women. I'm inspired by Mother Karua. I'm inspired by my grandmother. I'm inspired by my mother. I'm inspired by my age mates who are doctors. I'm inspired by my friend Josephine, who is like a founder of an organization in Samburu. So I'm just inspired by the stories of these women who are my friends. And I might also add to the viewers of 30 Minutes with personal is political. What you go through as a young African woman in Senegal, in Chad, in South Africa, in Mozambique, is not necessarily a personal problem. It is a reflection of the systemic issues in your country. Why, for example, in the last 2024 was a super election year. 15 elections were affected by climate change and floods, and it affected the elections. So as much as we think that climate issues are abstract things of the West, there is a direct impact on climate change and democracy. So for me, what inspired me to go out and to push myself forward is my own experiences, my lived experiences, meeting these brilliant women, going to school, loving arts. So it has been a number of issues. They keep getting clearer. Sometimes they don't get clearer. But no doubt that I feel like we need more African women in African parliaments, because that's where decisions are made. While I appreciate that women are being represented in the social sectors, which is good, we need to have women in the hard subjects. We are talking about debt. We are talking about expenditure. We are talking about taxation. We are talking about political representation. We are talking about economics. So for me, I feel like we need to have women holding such dockets in the executives, in the parliament, because it matters who decides how your money is getting used. It matters who decides who takes the taxes. It matters who decides this money goes where. So those are the things that influence me, and my hope is to have more women in African parliaments.
And what would you say to young women who are following us all over Africa and the diaspora who want to run for in politics and who are scared? What would you tell them?
One, I'd say that you first in Kenya, every time we have more women vying, we have more women winning. So the first step is that you have to be in it to win it. So for as long as we'll have more women vying, then we will have more women winning. It is a statistics that has been proven over and over again. So my urge to young African in Africa and in the diaspora, you first have to get engaged. In most countries, if not all, the first point of entry is political parties. So of course we are in a continent that maybe might not have all political parties as we wish, but I wish to encourage young African women to join political parties, whichever way they present themselves in your country, because the first point of entry in politics is actually being in some form of a democratic organizing, which is a political party. Then we can be able to push for change within gender equality policies, anti-sexual harassment policies, more budgets for the women and the youth organizing. So my first encouragement, you have to be in it to win it. Two, you have to have a thick skin, because patriarchy fights back. Why? The patriarchy has always had access, and the patriarchy has always felt entitled to political leadership. No one wants to lose their power. So you have to have a thick skin. That way, even if you are bullied, you'll fight back, but you won't get out of the race. Third, as a young African woman, you need to be strategic and amplify your work. By now, we know that we have been taught to be polite, to be humble, to shrink ourselves, to act as if we are just there to be happy, but not to take the hard decisions. You have to own your space, document your work, amplify your things that you're doing, and also raise your voice. Every time you go to a meeting, you have to contribute. You don't have to give yourself funny gender roles like serving tea, serving jollof rice, serving things, matoke in Ugandan meetings. You have to go and own the room and do your things. The other thing we need to do as young African women is actually to learn from the women who came before us. We have, even if you cannot meet, like for example in Kenya there is Mother Karua. Even if you're in the diaspora, you can read about her work. I think one of the challenges I noticed with our young African women, it is the thinking that for someone to be your mentor or your role model, you must meet them every weekend. You must enjoy with them and talk with them. Sometimes you can be mentored virtually. If today I go and I want to learn more about Joyce Banda, of course her daughter is my friend, but even though I will never be able to meet her, there's the internet. There are her speeches. Even if I want to learn about Mother Karua, I want to learn about Ellen Johnson. Don't wait to meet these famous African women in person. Read about them, educate yourself. Lastly, I wish to say that add your knowledge. Don't talk like you're in the marketplace. When you're a leader, you have to have strong points. Prepare. Thank God for AI. Thank God for the technology. You can learn about any subject. You can learn about the environment. You can learn about every subject. So you have to educate yourself and empower yourself with knowledge.
And what would be your call to action for policymakers and political leaders?
I think I want to tell our political leaders in Africa, one, how do you expect to win in a football match if half of your team is not playing? African women, Africa is built on the backs of African women. Go to African village, we're in Uganda, we can see bananas here. Go to these kind of homes, go to these places, you'll find women toiling the land, doing everything, doing all the work. It is so unfortunate that we have pushed women away from public life. We need to have these women in the public life, in the public sphere of influence, because so far the reason why we are not doing well is because we don't have women. So you are playing with half the team. Why are you losing the other team that could be helpful? That is the first thing. Second thing is that gender equality is not a favor. Gender equality is human rights issues. Gender equality is something that you should do because it's good for your society. When you give the women important portfolios like treasury, climate justice, budgets, You're not doing them a favor, you want something good for your country. That, I do understand that even as we enjoy, African women and girls in some region are really neglected. Bad habits like FGM. We have seen breast ironing in some parts of Western Africa. We have seen issues of gender-based violence. Like in Kenya, we had the End Femicide March. My urge to African governments, make life good for the girls, because it's the girls who become the women. Make education free, please. At this age where everybody, we are in a knowledge economy, you can't afford to have boys and girls who cannot write their names, and boys and girls who cannot read or write their names. Most importantly, make the world equal and safer for all people to enjoy.
And what would you say to funders? What call do you say to donors and funders? What are the needs right now of Hummingbird, who's working to support people with disabilities in Kenya?
Hummingbird, for me and for all the leaders who are young women who have started nascent organizations, I wish to encourage you to trust us. We might not have all the abstract documents and policy papers, but trust our lived experiences. If I tell you these are the problems of the people who have disabilities, it's a lived experience. I cannot qualify it with the paperwork. It's a lived experience. Trust us, trust-based funding. Don't write us off. There are areas of capacity. It's actually, we have the capacity. It's not even capacity building. It's capacity strengthening. That respect-based kind of funding. Sometimes, even though we are funded, we see a lot of disrespect along the way. Fourth, flexible funding. Help us to also build our own capacities. Importantly, deliberately fund organizations run by young women. Accept our way of documentation. Sometimes as Africans, we might not have all the right English, but we might have the beautiful ways of oral literature. I can document my impact in a video while seated on top of a tree, and not maybe all the time to do the high-level reports. But most importantly, young women and girls in Africa are doing a lot of work. Support them, try and go to the grassroots. That's where there is real impact.
Thank you so much, Wanja.
Thank you, I appreciate.
Bye to all the followers from Lake Victoria. Bye.